Bismillah wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah wa ba'd. In the name of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon his last and final messenger, family, friends, foes, haters, and hateettes. You have arrived to your digital dose of dopamine with your humble hosts, the Feachaz, aka Negrodamus, aka the Big Black Heart Attack, aka Morpheus, aka Killmonger, aka the Rumble in the Jungle, aka Heisenberg, aka Tony Montana. Say hello to my little friend. Welcome back, family. We greet you all in peace and love and no hatred in my heart. Salaam Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we begin, please like, please subscribe, and please share. As you know, we got a hella haters up in this piece, family. Press number ones in the chat if y'all can hear. And we got a doozy for you today. We got a doozy. So make sure you got your popcorn and your pop, because this one's going to be really, really, really deep. Okay. So family, when I woke up this morning, as I usually do, I was, listening to the headline news, right? And the headline news is essentially like mainstream media. It is essentially a glowing indictment against mainstream media. That's what news is nowadays in 2024. Anyways, right? They were talking about the anniversary of when the Hamas terrorist raid was operated against Israeli settlers. Not a single word of what was done to the Palestinians, past, present, or continuing into the future. Not one word, except for in this particular news outlet, they did mention that there was some protest, okay? And the Palestinian protesters destroyed some properties, some university somewhere. But essentially, they talked about how the Israeli settlers were as a day of mourning and blah, 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 blah. However, most of y'all, you know how we do it here on the Features. We are the Black Muslim media. We were not surprised at all, okay? We were not surprised. We were not shocked, because we understand this enemy very, very well. So you will see that, especially in modern times, that most people, right, in our times, tend to get their news sources from other than mainstream media outlets. So you find a lot of mainstream media outlets essentially going out of business and trying to make budget because they are, propaganda platforms. So when I tried to set up this live this morning, it took me over an hour. You want to know why it took me over an hour to set this up, right? Y'all want to know why? Let me tell you why. Let me tell you something, okay? All right, before I even started to set up this live, I was getting shadow banned before I even started. And you don't want to know why I was getting shadow banned? Because you cannot put, and we have to tread very carefully, when we do this live today, we tread very carefully, very, very lightly, because you cannot put the word Israel in the title. I tried, believe me, I tried. Okay. You cannot put the word conflict or bombing, or even I tried to put just October 7th, and that they still banned me from getting this live done. So we need to tread very lightly. We need to tread very, very lightly, because we ain't trying to be no type of disrespectful to YouTube or anything like that. And because of the nature of the topics that we cover here, I'm pretty sure that we were flagged before we got started, right? Because the nature, we cover this kind of stuff. Y'all hear me? So my day ones, they know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not from my day ones, okay, if you're not, I highly suggest you go into the comments section and ask my day ones how many times the feature's been banned, how many times the feature's been shut down, right? Just ask them, okay? For totally innocuous reasons other than covering the subject matter that we cover. Okay, we are not fresh and fit up in this piece. Okay, we're not doing this stuff for the clout. We come with receipts, not just a whole bunch of yin yang and talk. Right. So, family, we're going to be cautious and we're going to use certain terminology in order not to get on YouTube's bad side, which is why we have the title that we have today, because you cannot say I couldn't put in the title the gin to the O to the side of beef. Okay, I couldn't put that in the title. I had to get creative with the title, which is why the title is gin on the side. We wanted to talk about how Israel and a certain people that cannot be named, they do not have bombs, or they do not produce their own bombs. Right, that was what we want to talk about for October 7th. This is a totally October 7th topic. Now, we are, like I said, we're going to go deep. So some of y'all might want to take notes because we're going to be mentioning names and dates and all kind of stuff. So if you don't have your notepads, I suggest you go get them now, or just open up your notepad up in your computer or your laptop, whatever you're using, so you can refer back to it later, or just save the live so you can come back to it and take notes later, because you're probably going to want to use some of this stuff. Okay. So now, like, subscribe, share, hit me up on Patreon, and let's get into the nitty gritty. Family, one of the things that we've mentioned on this channel more than once is the Iran-Contra affair. Now, this was a major scandal back in the early 80s, right, when the president at that time was Ronald Reagan. And a certain U.S. colonel named Oliver North, you need make sure you remember this name, Oliver North, he was essentially put into the spotlight over this Iran-Contra affair. So just to give you the gist of what was going on with this Iran-Contra affair, is that Ronald Reagan, the president of that time, he signed off on the selling of armaments to Iran in order to free hostages. Now, how did he do this? He did not do this through an act of Congress, because Congress would never do that, right? Rather, he did it covertly. And he used Oliver North to basically be the go-between to handle this deal. And what ended up happening was, now remember, at this time, Iran and Iraq, they were at odds with each other. So it was the peak of the Cold War. The United States was supporting Iraq and Saddam Hussein, and Russia was supporting Iran. Okay, in the Cold War at this time. Okay, so however, what ended up happening was the U.S. started selling armaments to Iran to free these hostages, and they sent the profits from this deal. A large portion, I believe, is the deal itself was $30 million, and they sent $18 million at this time in the early 1980s to Nicaragua to support the Contras in their fight against the Sandinistas. The Sandinistas was the communist-backed political wing in Nicaragua at this time. So they didn't want the communists to get a foothold in the West. So this is how this all started. Eventually, what ended up happening was, in order to support these Contras, and they did it in a covert manner, right, to bypass Congress. In order to support the Contras, supported with the backing, the secret backing, mind you, of Ronald Reagan, and to bypass Congress, they started flooding the black community with cocaine from Nicaragua, Colombia, some other places. I can't remember, right? But anyways, they started flooding the black community with cocaine. The government did this, mind you, backed by the CIA, to fund the Contras in Nicaragua. Just why you call the Iran-Contra affair, okay? So Ronald Reagan, he essentially kept this whole process at arm's length for the processes of plausible deniability. Simultaneously, while he was flooding the black community with crack cocaine to arm the Contras against the Sandinistas, he was also running at the very same time a Just Say No campaign. Y'all know what Just Say No is? Who remembers Just Say No? I know how old y'all are, right? But who remembers Just Say No? Okay. Just Say No was the anti-drug campaign that was run by Ronald and Nancy Reagan in the 80s. Okay. Just say no. And they had these commercials on TV all the time. Just say no. Just say no to drugs. Right. And also be tough on crime while flooding the black community with the very same things that are causing the sharp rise in crime and violence and drug usage. Okay. All doing this all at the same time while arming both Saddam Hussein and Iran in order to support the Contras. Okay. This all blew up with the congressional hearings of Oliver North. And in typical white supremacist fashion, you had the country divided where black folks were saying that this Oliver North was an absolute criminal, and he is complicit in the destruction of the black community, while white folks were calling him a hero. Typical white supremacist fashion. Okay? And y'all probably wondering what all this got to do with what's happening today. I'm getting to it, okay? As I usually, I'm getting to it. Just listen, y'all. Okay? Listen, y'all. All right? You need to, and this is the first note, you know, if you haven't taken notes about Oliver North, you can look him up, but you absolutely need to take this note about a certain individual. His name is Gary Webb. If you don't know who Gary Webb is, I strongly suggest that you look up Gary Webb because it's getting more and more difficult to find out information on Gary Webb, right? Because he's being expunged from the internet. But look up Gary Webb and his Dark Alliance series. If you can get it, make sure you save it on your computers. Okay? Gary Webb, I believe, was in the early 90s. He was the one who exposed all of this. How, in detail, he's an investigative reporter, in great detail, how the U.S. government flooded the black community with crack in order to fund covert operations in Latin America. So that the very same government can turn around and say, oh, look at these black folks, they criminals and stuff. Okay? Gary Webb, write it down. And the name of the series is called the Dark Alliance series. Okay? Make sure you write it down. Okay? If you haven't taken notes. So now, this takes us to George Bush, who became George Bush Jr., by the way, not senior. George Bush Sr. is another piece of work. He's another can of worms. But we're building up an argument here, okay? So George Bush, in the year 2000, he's making his presidential campaign, right? And he got the vast majority of Muslims to vote for him. Okay? The vast majority of the Muslims in America voted. And when we see Muslims, we mean immigrant Muslims, okay? That's what we really mean. We're not talking about, black folk, okay? We're talking about immigrant Muslims. They largely supported George Bush, okay? Largely supported George Bush. And then 9/11 happened, and he started his campaign against his former ally and friend, Saddam Hussein. Okay? Now, I just want y'all, we're going to watch a quick video. Some of y'all might have seen this already, but some of y'all may have younger ones, probably wouldn't know, right? So I want y'all to see what George Bush said to campaign for his war in Iraq, okay? I want you to listen to the actual language, okay? 1 second, y'all. Like, subscribe, share me up on Patreon, family. Let's get this going. 1 second, family. So we're going to share. Now listen to what he says.
From threatening America or our friends and allies with weapons of mass destruction. Some of these regimes have been pretty quiet since September the 11th, but we know their true nature. North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction while starving its citizens. Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror, while an unelected few repress the Iranian people's hope for freedom. Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror. The Iraqi regime has plotted to develop anthrax and nerve gas and nuclear weapons for over a decade. This is a regime that has already used poison gas to murder thousands of its own citizens, leaving the bodies of mothers huddled over their dead children. This is a regime that agreed to international inspections, then kicked out the inspectors. This is a regime that has something to hide from the civilized world. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world by seeking weapons of mass destruction. These regimes.
Now, you heard him say he called Saddam Hussein as a regime the axis of evil, okay? Quick quiz, family. Which country was arming Saddam Hussein to do all of this to begin with? And which country trained Saddam Hussein in military tactics and all kind of stuff in order to carry out the very same things that George Bush accused him of? Can somebody put it in the chat, please? Which country trained and armed the regime of Saddam Hussein to carry out all this stuff? Somebody put it in the chat, please. Somebody put it in the chat. While we're waiting for y'all to put it in the chat, we're going to listen again.
Arming to threaten the peace of the world by seeking weapons of mass destruction. These regimes pose a grave and growing danger. They could provide these arms to terrorists, giving them the means to match their hatred. They could attack our allies or attempt to blackmail the United States. In any of these cases, the price of indifference would be catastrophic. We will work closely with our coalition to deny terrorists and their state sponsors the materials, technology, and expertise to make and deliver weapons of mass destruction, then kicked out the inspectors. This is a regime that has something to hide from the civilized world. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
So we heard states like these and their allies constitute an axis of evil, okay? So, cats out the bag, George Bush lied, okay? We all know he lied, right? The whole world knows that he lied about weapons of mass destruction, all that kind of stuff, admitted as such. And then said, oh, while we're here in Iraq, might as well get rich, bitch. that was the whole play. Okay? But I digress. Family. 1 second, y'all. The reason why we played that is because there's a certain person that came to the States a few weeks ago. 1 second, y'all. 1 second. Hold on. Let me get this up here. So, anyways, this individual came to the States a few weeks ago. Okay. And he gave a lecture in front of a UN assembly. Now, this is the same week, y'all, that Marcellus Khalifa Williams was assassinated. The very same week that Marcellus Khalifa Williams was, shaheed. Rahimahullah. Marcellus Khalifa Williams, okay? Marcellus Khalifa Williams was accused of murder. He was accused of stabbing a woman over 30 times in her home. Now, I want y'all to think about this. In this particular case, there were 2 sets of footprints, hair, but not a single shred of physical evidence tying Marcellus Khalifa Williams to that alleged crime, to that particular crime, in which the witnesses against Marcellus Khalifa Williams both had, conflict of interest in accusing him for these crimes. Both of them. 2 witnesses. Both of them are deceased. They deceased before his assassination. But the point is, this particular criminal is not just accused of murder, but is an admitted murderer. And he brags and boasts about his murders, who ended up in New York City. The United States has an arrest warrant out for Vladimir Putin, who is a Boy Scout compared to this individual. He is a Boy Scout compared to this individual. This individual has no shame in the amount of war crimes that he brags about. Now, we heard George Bush call Saddam Hussein his allies. Mind you, he's America's the original ally of Iraq, the original ally, and he calls them the axis of evil. Now I want y'all to hear this, y'all. Watch this, y'all.
Everything in our power to ensure that Iran never gets nuclear weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, as Israel defends itself against Iran in the seven-front war, the line separating the blessing and the curse could not be more clear. This is the map I presented here last year. It's a map of a blessing. It shows Israel and its Arab partners forming a land bridge connecting Asia and Europe between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Across this bridge, we will lay rail lines, energy pipelines, fiber optic cables, and this will serve the betterment of 2 billion people. Now look at this second map. It's a map. Look at the second map. It's a map of a curse. It's a map of an arc of terror that Iran has created and imposed from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean. Iran's malignant arc has shut down international waterways. It cuts off trade. It destroys millions, destroys nations from within, and inflicts misery on millions. On the one hand, a bright blessing, a future of hope. On the other hand, a dark future of despair. And if you think this dark...
Now you see the language? Y'all see the language? Is there any difference in the language that Netanyahu's using and George Bush used before him and George Bush Sr. even before him and even Ronald Reagan before him and even any type of devilish U.S. president before him when they want to go to murder millions of people? Just keep watching, y'all.
Dark map is only a curse for Israel. If you think that, then you should think again. Because Iran's aggression, if it's not checked, will endanger every single country in the Middle East and many, many countries in the rest of the world. Because Iran seeks to impose its radicalism well beyond the Middle East. That's why it funds terror networks on 5 continents. That's why it builds ballistic missiles for nuclear warheads to threaten the entire world. For too long, the world has appeased Iran. It turns a blind eye to its internal repression. It turns a blind eye to its external aggression. Well, that appeasement must end. And that appeasement must end now. Nations of the world should support the brave people of Iran who want to rid themselves of this evil regime. Responsible governments should not only support Israel in rolling back Iran's aggression, they should join Israel. They should join Israel in stopping Iran's nuclear weapons program. In this body, in the Security Council, we're going to have a deliberation in a few months. And I call on the Security Council to snap back UN Security Council sanctions against Iran, because we must all do everything in our power to ensure that Iran never gets nuclear weapons.
Don't miss out. Log on to oneindia.com.
So you get the point. From George Bush to Benjamin Netanyahu, an actual murderer, admitted murderer, okay? Somebody who brags about their war crimes. Okay? Who walked around freely in the United States, did not get arrested while Marcellus Khalifa Williams was being, put to death for a crime he didn't commit, like so many thousands of black people before him. Okay? So why are we mentioning all this? Why are we mentioning Iran-Contra, why are we mentioning George Bush Jr.? And why are we mentioning all of this, tying all of this to October 7th and Benjamin Netanyahu? This is what y'all got to understand. Just like crack did not come into the black community from black people bringing crack into the black community, and just like Al-Qaeda never produced its own armaments or weapons, Israel also has no weapons. The U.S. government could end the genocide overnight if they wanted to. You know, this nighttime meeting that they have with the jinn on the side, they can end it overnight if they wanted to. Okay? And the reason why they haven't is because they don't want it to end. Benjamin Netanyahu, he laid out the playbook. And the playbook is that pipeline that runs through from India to Saudi Arabia. So the colonial project has not ended. Okay? Israel, y'all got to understand this. Israel does not produce, nor do they purchase their own armaments. They don't do either. They don't produce, they don't make their weapons, nor do they purchase them, nor do they purchase them. Okay, they don't do either. How do they get all these weapons then? Unless you consider an Uzi like a weapon, which they don't even use in their warfare anyways. Okay, but anyways, I digress. All its weaponry, all of it, is gifted to them through acts of Congress, which the American taxpayer is flipping the bill for at the rate of billions per year, which also the American taxpayer funds the rich lifestyle that these Europeans and Americans who are cosplaying as Semitic people of Israel, they're cosplaying as Semitics, they're not actual Semitics. You're talking about white folks from Europe, okay? You're talking about white folks from Brooklyn, white folks from somewhere in America somewhere. Okay? Who are getting their bills flipped through acts of Congress, through lobbying, whether it's in Canada, the States, Europe, massive lobbying in order to keep this colonial project, which is happening in Palestine today, going. Just like the Homestead Act. We talked about the Homestead Act here several times. It's the same thing. So y'all think, especially the immigrant Muslim community, y'all think that white folks are so rich and so powerful because they're just smarter than everybody. They're just smarter, they're just superior and all kind of stuff. And you don't realize the amount of thievery and looting and pillaging that these people actually do. Through an act of Congress, through the Homestead Act, millions of acres of land was given for free to white Europeans in order for them to migrate from Europe to America to switch the demographics, which was largely black and brown, to white. So they gave away millions of acres of land for free. And on top of that, they educated the very same immigrants that were coming in. You know, people who were formerly not considered white, all of a sudden they became white, like the Irish, the Polish, the Germans, all these kind of folks. Okay? Millions of acres of land, free. Okay? Not only that, they taught them how to farm and work the land. Not only that, they gave them free education, free equipment to farm the land. And meanwhile, they're out here telling black folks to lift themselves up by their bootstraps and stuff. And you who just got here, y'all who just got here, you got the nerve to tell us why we asking for reparations. And we are still suffering from the crack epidemic, which is the most egregious, in my humble opinion, the most egregious crime that any Western president has ever inflicted on their own citizens, who they call citizens. And remember, there are some countries where black folk, they're still not citizens of their own countries. They're not. Mexico recently recognized black people, black Mexicans, as citizens of the country. I think it was 2015. The black Mexican states, they recently recognized them as citizens. Argentina, egregious racism. Brazil, egregious racism. What's happening in the U.S. is that, ironically enough, as bad as in the States, they are in the best position of black people globally, right, with more opportunity than anybody else. And still, look at the mess that's over there. But I digress. The point is, when you flood your citizens, your alleged citizens, with the most destructive drug known to man in order to fund some other country somewhere else, okay? They ain't got nothing to do with your country other than to prevent some sort of political, opposition in a small, tiny country somewhere. And you poison generations of families. And not only that, you make sure that the men are perpetually in prison. And not only that, you criminalize the existence of these people through media, through policing, police training, and apartheid tactics. Generations of families completely destroyed. Does any of this sound familiar? What's going on in Palestine today? Any of it sound familiar? And then you turn around and you're talking about axis of evil. You are the axis of evil. You can't. The whole world is looking at is not real with the side eye. The entire planet is looking at them with the side eye. And the reason why they're looking at them with the side eye is because for decades and decades and decades, the whole world believed one thing about is not real. Because it was propagated so heavily. You can imagine. Here's the situation, family. Let me just break it down to you real quick, okay? Somebody comes to you and tells you that they have a book coming from God, okay? God has revealed a book to them. And you say, really? You say, yeah. And this is God's book? Yeah, this is God's book. What does God's book say? God's book says that the authors of this God's book, okay, they are the children of God. You're like, word? Yeah, the authors of the book that God wrote, right? The ones who wrote down God's word, they're the God's children. Word? What does that mean? That means that anybody who opposes us will get dealt with in the matter of the wrath of God. Would any of you accept that? Would any of you accept that? That somebody comes to you and said, this is God's book, you know, and the people who wrote this book are the children of God, and you better do what we say or else you're going to face the wrath of God. Would any of you accept that? Well, let me tell y'all something. For generations, and I mean generations, we have been taught this nonsense, especially in the church. Especially in the church. Those of y'all who were around in the 80s and the 90s, you probably remember your grandma watching these televangelical shows, right? Every televangelist, all of them, were 100% pro-Israel. And the only people who ever said anything in support of Palestinians just happened to be your black activists, your black civil rights leaders, you know, your black leadership. They were the ones who were the voice of the Palestinians. It was only them. From Malcolm X to James Baldwin to Bob Marley to you name it. You name it. When it wasn't popular, they were standing up for the Palestinians. But nobody else was standing up for them. And the only reason why what is going on here? You see? What is happening here, man? You see, I told y'all, man. I like I said, family, I don't know if y'all can hear me, but like I said, we are treading in dangerous waters, right? I'm not sure how much long I can continue with this particular video because it looks like YouTube's going to shut us down. So I need you to please support the channel, right? Support this channel, right? If you, with whatever you can, whether you like, whether you subscribe, whether you share, whatever, make sure you support the channel, okay? Because it looks like I can see here, I don't know what happened to the video. My camera's on. I'm not even sure if y'all can hear me right now. Press number 1 in the chat if y'all can hear me, please. Okay, you can hear me fine? Because the camera is on, it's working fine. All right, but I don't know what's going on. And y'all, and like I said, if y'all don't know, just ask my day ones. Ask my day. This is not the first time this happened. Okay, we get into these topics, and then next thing you know, we get shut down during the live. It'll get shut down. Right, so that's why we're being very, very careful with the language. Right, so just make sure that you support this channel. You can buy me a coffee. You can do the PayPal. You can do the Patreon. You can do the super chats. Support the channel because this is crazy. This happens all of the time. Just ask my day ones if y'all don't believe me. Okay, ask my day here. We're treading lightly. Second, y'all. 1 second. Even the streaming is tripping out now. I can see it's tripping. 1 second, y'all. It's not the first time. Let me get this going up here. Sound is chopping now. Yeah, I think they're going to shut us down. I think they may shut us down, right? So we're not going to go too much longer. I put the link in the chat if anybody wants to come in, right? I'm going to stop talking about this particular topic for now and see if we don't get shut down. All right. So if anybody wants to hop in, links in the chat. All right. Mind you, I'm fairly confident if they start doing this in this video right here, I'm very confident they're going to shadow ban the video. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share. All right, it's bare minimum. The bare minimum you could do. Right, we might have to continue this conversation on Patreon and on Rumble. Right, because I don't think we'll be able to finish off here for sure. Right, but anyways. Let us get into, see, you cannot mention the people who cannot be named who shadow ban us, right? You cannot mention them, right? But you can say nigga all day. You can say that. You can pretend to be a machine gun or a motorcycle, nigga. You can do that all day, all night, and nothing will happen. Absolutely nothing will happen. Okay. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to cut it, family. I apologize, but make sure you like, subscribe, share. Make sure you support the channel. Buy me a coffee. Hit me up on Patreon. Hit me up on PayPal. And I'm gonna have to talk to you guys later because it looks like we are gonna get shut down. Okay. All right. So. Free the land, beloved, free the land, and we will talk later.